Johnny, the Department of Justice says synthetic fraud is the fastest growing financial crime. What are you seeing in that area and with your customers right now?
Definitely. So over the last 10 years, we've seen synthetic fraud move from just stolen credit cards, stolen lines of credit, to much more nefarious acts related to money laundering. So we're seeing DDA accounts, investment accounts, any type of checking account, prepaid, money order, being utilized not just to steal money, which obviously is huge through credit, but also to use it to launder money at massive scale. We're seeing synthetic fraud get very sophisticated as people now have many years of rich credit history, developed identities over many different accounts, both in the nature of fabricated, which is totally fictitious, as well as manipulated identities, which is kind of a combination of different types of real and completely made up information.
Synthetic identities have been around for a while. You've coined the term years and years ago. But talk to me about why this is so timely right now. Fraud's always important, but there's a sense of urgency out there. And how do you see this in terms of the bigger trends we have as an industry?
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest trends that we're seeing, which is very exciting, is for the first time, the growth teams, which are as kind of marketing budgets have come down in a recession, CAC has also come down. So we're actually seeing conversion rates become much more under the microscope. So the ability for Socure to verify 7, 8, 9, 10% more people is driving a ton of demand on the conversion side. But for the first time, we're actually seeing this partnership between growth and fraud, where in a recession, need goes up, and so fraud rates actually go up. And so we're seeing more attacks, more sophisticated attacks than we've ever seen in the last decade. And the thing to me that is most interesting is fraud and the growth teams historically have been on kind of two separate islands, similar to Hawaii. And they've been on two separate islands where now we're seeing this like quantitative partnership approach to how do we think about every new account? How do we think about every new account in the context of fraud? And then how do we think about optimizing both kind of false positives and false negatives across each of them? And obviously this is a thing that we solve. So the ability to verify the largest number of good identities and do so with the least amount of identity fraud. We're just seeing this trend is the thing that we are like most excited about. In so many enterprises getting much smarter of the compliance and risk team working very tightly to be fully optimized in their decisioning together.
So Socure has recently put out a report, an analysis of your 1,400 customers and what you've been seeing on synthetic fraud. One of the things you came up with is you found the most prevalent identity is Michael Smith. Tell us more about Michael. Who is he and what do we need to know?
Sure, so a big part of synthetic identity fraud is the want to like blend in. So what we found is that the most common names that are used to create synthetic identities map almost perfectly to the top 10 most popular census names. Because these are obviously the most prevalent, which enables people to blend real names with like a little bit manipulated date of births, potentially tumbled SSNs. And what we found was like the most common type of synthetic identity is a Michael Smith, who happens to live in Houston, Texas, who happens to be a millennial. And this we've actually found to be the #1 most typical synthetic identity that's created. So yeah, Michael Smith is quite famous and quite popular.
Other news, I know you've been doing a lot. Socure's been busy. You are expanding internationally. Tell me about how you're doing this and what the rollout looks like.
Yeah, so when we initially started the company, the idea was that we wanted to be the best in the world at a thing. And so we decided to focus mostly initially on financial services and mostly initially on the US market. And so we've really been on this mission to be able to be the first to be able to verify 100% of good identities and completely eliminate identity fraud. And so now we're seeing verification rates consistently in the high 90s. We're seeing our binary classification models for third-party fraud, for synthetic identity fraud, capturing well north of 50, 60, 70%, and just the riskiest 1%. And so we feel that we're at the right time and basically getting to perfect classification here in the US to be able to take the technology and analytical capabilities that we've built into new geographies. There's a pretty big patent that we got underneath the hood related to how we do clustering and entity resolution, which allows us to very quickly plug in new data sources in new geographies, quantify them, structure them, make them searchable, which is enabling us to move into new countries very quickly.
Congratulations on the expansion. what's next on the radar and what's additional for 2023?
Absolutely. So as we look to 2023, I think that the first thing is how do we take our best-in-class identity proofing, where we're really focused on new account opening, and expand that over the entire customer lifecycle. So getting into authentication, re-authentication, looking at alerts. How do we make sure that if Heather started good, this remains to be Heather, and that Heather hasn't gone bad, or there doesn't need to be any additional kind of step up for risk rating of that individual. The second is, we've been really successful in fintech and financial services, and going very aggressively into a number of new verticals. So e-commerce marketplaces, a big push into public sector, into healthcare and insurance, all heavily regulated industries where there's a lot of money moving. And then I think the third big piece is, again, touching on the 100% verification and perfect classification. We do believe that what we're developing is going to be the first to be able to verify 100% of good identities and completely eliminate any fraud on the internet. And so this remains our mission, and the thing that we're going to be the first to execute on and deliver in 2023.